He gave her everything a woman is supposed to want. A house with a gate, a name that meant something in the neighborhood, a man who worked 18-hour days so she would never have to worry about a single thing. And every single morning, he sent a car for her. Same car, same driver, same route. For 3 years. He thought it was a kindness. He had no idea it was a catastrophe. By the time you finish watching this, you are going to question everything you think you know about trust, about loyalty, and about the secrets people keep right under your roof. Stay with me. Before we go any further, I want to lay out exactly what we're dealing with. 3 people, 1 household, 1 secret that had been building, quietly, deliberately, for months. There's Marcus, a self-made man in his 50s. The kind of man who built something from nothing and believed, truly believed, that providing for the people he loved was the same thing as loving them. There's Diane, his wife, younger, beautiful, restless in a way nobody around her could quite name. And then there's Ray, the driver. We'll get to Ray, the driver. But right now, I want you to hold 3 questions in your mind as we walk through this story. Question 1. How long did this go on before Marcus noticed a single thing? Question 2. When he finally discovered the truth about that pregnancy, what did this man actually do? And question 3. Where is Ray today? And does Marcus know where he is? Let's go back to the beginning. Marcus. Marcus grew up with nothing to prove and everything to lose. He was raised in a working-class household in the Midwest. His father worked with his hands. His mother worked double shifts. Marcus learned early that comfort was not something that came to you. It was something you went out and built with your bare hands, one decision at a time. By his mid-30s, he had his own business. By 40, he had a home most men his age only drove past. By 50, Marcus had what the world calls success. People who knew him described him the same way almost every time. Marcus was the kind of man who never complained, never asked for anything. He just worked. That's how he showed people he cared, through what he provided, through what he built. The problem, and there was a problem, though Marcus wouldn't see it until it was too late, was that the man who built the house wasn't always in it. 18-hour days have a cost, not always a financial one. Diane. Diane met Marcus when she was 28 and he was 43. She was drawn to his steadiness, his certainty. After years of men who couldn't commit to a dinner reservation, Marcus was a man who committed to everything. They married within a year. And for a while, it was good. More than good. She loved the stability, loved what he had built, loved being part of a life that felt, finally, solid. But stability, over time, can start to feel like stillness. Friends she confided in later used the same word. Almost without knowing each other had used it. She just seemed restless. Not unhappy exactly, but like she was waiting for something, and she didn't know what she was waiting for. That is a dangerous kind of feeling to carry into a house where your husband is never home. Ray, the driver. Marcus hired Ray about 3 years into the marriage. He needed someone reliable, someone trustworthy, someone who would show up without drama and do the job quietly. Ray was all of those things. He came with references. He had a clean record. He was punctual to the point where Marcus joked about setting his watch by him. He drove Diane everywhere. To appointments, to lunches, to errands that ate up whole afternoons. Marcus thought nothing of it. Why would he? Ray was staff. That was his first mistake. Not hiring Ray. Thinking of Ray as invisible. The first sign nobody noticed. A neighbor later recalled something she'd seen months earlier and dismissed completely. She'd glanced out her front window late one afternoon and noticed the black car, Marcus's car, parked in front of the house. Engine off. Both front seats occupied. They were talking, she said. Laughing, actually. I remember thinking, that's nice that she gets along with the driver. And I went back to what I was doing. That was the first sign. Nobody noticed it. And then one evening, Marcus came home early. Something he almost never did. He walked in through the side door, the one from the garage, and he noticed something. Something small and easy to explain. He stood there for a moment. Then he put it out of his mind and went upstairs to change. He would think about that moment for years afterward. What he saw? What he chose not to do with it. Because that was the moment. Right there. The last exit before the road led somewhere there was no coming back from. He drove right past it. The affair, and let's call it what it was, which did not begin the way people imagine these things begin. There was no dramatic moment of temptation. No night when everything fell apart at once. It started with conversations. That's the part that people underestimate. The conversations. Ray was in that car with Diane for hours every week. And somewhere along the way, nobody can say exactly when, he started paying attention to her in a way that Marcus, busy with work and deals and providing, had stopped doing. He asked how her day was, and he waited for the actual answer. He remembered things she mentioned, details Marcus would have forgotten by dinner. And Diane, a woman who was carrying that quiet, unnamed restlessness, started to find those miles in the car to be the best part of her day. That should have been a warning to her. But it wasn't. About 6 months after Ray was hired, the route started taking longer. Not dramatically longer. 20 minutes. 30. Enough to explain away with traffic or errands. Not enough to trigger suspicion in a man who trusted everyone in his household. There were long drives that went nowhere particular. There were afternoons with gaps that weren't explained. There was a phone, discovered much later, tucked into the lining of a jacket that wasn't where it was supposed to be. These things existed for months before anyone with access to the whole picture put them together. What Diane told herself. This is where the story gets complicated, because human beings are extraordinarily good at lying to themselves when the truth is something they don't want to face. Friends Diane confided in later described her internal logic at the time. Marcus was never home. Marcus didn't notice her anymore. This wasn't really an affair, it was just a connection. Just a conversation that had gone further than it should have. She told herself it wasn't serious. Then she told herself it didn't matter. Then she stopped telling herself anything at all and simply let it continue. And Ray, for his part, never pushed her to stop, never gave her a reason to end it. He was patient, consistent, attentive, all the things Marcus had been, once, and stopped being, when the work got heavier and the years got longer. The pregnancy. She found out on a Wednesday morning in November. She stood in that bathroom for 11 minutes. We know this because Marcus had installed a security camera in the hallway 2 years earlier. Standard home security, nothing suspicious about it. It captured her walking in, and it captured her walking out. Her expression, walking in, was uncertain. Walking out, it was something else. Something that looked almost like resolve. She had made a decision in that bathroom. And the decision was, she would tell Marcus the baby was his. The math would hold. Marcus wouldn't question it. He had no reason to. And he didn't. He bought a crib before the end of the month. For 9 months, the secret held. The baby was born. A girl. Marcus held her in the delivery room, and by every account, he wept. 2 weeks later, he got a phone call he was never supposed to receive. From a number he didn't recognize. He almost didn't pick up. The discovery. The phone call. He answered on the 4th ring. The voice on the other end was a woman's. Calm. Not angry. Almost matter of fact. She said 3 sentences, and then she hung up. 3 sentences. We don't know exactly what she said. What we know is that after he put the phone down, Marcus sat in his home office for 45 minutes without moving. Then he went downstairs, made himself a cup of coffee he didn't drink, and went back upstairs to bed. He did not say a word to Diane. Not yet. Then he embarked investigation. People who knew Marcus have a word for how he operated under pressure. Methodical. He did not rage. He did not confront. He did not come apart. He went quiet. And he started gathering evidence. Over the following 2 weeks, Marcus pulled phone records. He reviewed the GPS history from the family car, a feature he'd set up years earlier and completely forgotten about. He cross-referenced dates. He looked at receipts. He mapped routes against timestamps. And the picture that emerged was not ambiguous. It was not a question. It was a calendar, a geography, a documented pattern of deception that had been running quietly alongside his marriage for nearly 2.5 years. He sat with that knowledge alone for days before he took the next step. The red herring. There was a moment where Marcus went in the wrong direction. He had a name that Diane had mentioned too many times. A colleague she'd been to a lunch with twice in the last year. Nothing definitive, but in a mind that is already primed to look for betrayal, coincidence starts to look like evidence. Marcus confronted that man directly. It was a difficult conversation. It was also a wrong one. The man was confused, defensive, incredible. Marcus believed him, which meant the answer was still out there. Someone else was still in this story. And Marcus turned his attention back to everything in his own house. Then he requested for DNA test. Marcus ordered a private paternity test through a laboratory he found online. He paid cash. He used a hair from the baby's brush. He mailed it himself, early one morning, before Diane was awake. And then he waited 10 days. 10 days in which he held this child every morning before work, fed her, rocked her, told her she was going to be just fine. 10 days in which he looked at his wife across the dinner table and said nothing. 10 days in which part of him prayed he was wrong, and part of him already knew he wasn't. The results arrive. He didn't open the results in the house. He drove to the end of the block, pulled over, and sat there. He read the results in the front seat of his own car, parked outside his own home, on a Tuesday afternoon in early spring. He sat there for a long time. Then he picked up his phone and called his brother. His voice was flat. He said 4 words. "I need you here." Then he hung up. He now had the proof. The question was, what does a man like Marcus do when he is holding irrefutable evidence that the family he built, the child he held in his arms every morning, the woman he trusted completely, was never what he thought it was? What does a man like that do? We are about to find out. The confrontation. It was a Tuesday. Marcus had waited 4 days after the results arrived. 4 days of complete normalcy. Breakfast, work, dinner, good night. The children, they had 2 older children from earlier in the marriage, were asleep. The house was quiet. Marcus called Diane downstairs. She said later that she knew something was wrong the moment she reached the bottom of the stairs. Not from anything he said, from the way he was standing. "He looked at me like I was a stranger," she said, "like he had never seen me before." On the kitchen table, a manila folder. Inside it, 2 documents, the phone records, and the DNA results. He slid the folder across the table. He didn't say anything. He waited. This was a moment of silence. Accounts differ on what came next, on tone, on exact words. What everyone agrees on is the silence. Diane looked at the documents for what felt like a very long time. And then she looked up at Marcus. And Marcus asked one question. Just one. She didn't answer immediately. The silence stretched out between them in that kitchen, in a house he had built, at a table he had chosen, under lights he had paid for, and it said everything that was about to be said out loud. Then confession was made. She confirmed it. She confirmed Ray. She confirmed the timeline. She confirmed that she had known, from the moment she stood in that bathroom, that the child was not Marcus's. And she had made a choice. Marcus listened to all of it. He did not raise his voice. People who know him found this both unsurprising and deeply disturbing. "That's how you knew it was serious with Marcus," his brother said. "When he got loud, it was just noise. When he got quiet, that was real." There was one moment, where something in Marcus's composure cracked. His brother, who had arrived by then and was waiting in the living room, heard it. Not words, just a sound. The sound of a man who has been carrying a question for 10 days and now has his answer. The one thing Diane didn't say. Marcus said later, to his brother, not publicly, that what hurt the most was not the confession. It was what didn't follow it. She did not say she was sorry. Not that night. Not once during that conversation. Marcus filed for divorce the following week. The papers were ready. He had prepared them quietly, alongside the DNA test, in those 4 days of silence. Ray disappears. At 11:47 p.m. that Tuesday night, Marcus sent Ray a text message. It said, "Your services are no longer required. Do not contact anyone in this household again." By the following morning, Ray had vacated his apartment. By 48 hours later, his phone number was disconnected. He was simply gone, which raised a question that nobody in that household had thought to ask until it was too late. Had Ray done this before? A man that prepared to vanish, that quickly, that cleanly, had almost certainly thought about this exit long before he needed to use it. The confrontation was not the end of this story. It was barely the middle, because what Marcus's attorney uncovered 6 months later, in the middle of what was already an ugly custody battle, turned everything that had already happened into something far more sinister. Ray hadn't just done this once. The pattern. During the custody proceedings, Marcus's attorney did what good attorneys do. She dug, and what she found, buried in court records from another state, was a name she recognized. Ray. Different employer. Different city. Different woman. Same role. Same pattern. Same timeline. Ray had been a driver before, in a household remarkably similar to Marcus's. A successful husband who worked long hours. A younger wife who felt overlooked. A quiet, attentive man behind the wheel who made himself indispensable in ways the husband never saw coming. That relationship had also ended in pregnancy. That household had also dissolved. And Ray had also, when things reached their breaking point, vanished. This was not a mistake. This was not a man who got swept up in something he didn't intend. This was a man who knew exactly what he was doing, who chose households deliberately, who positioned himself with patience and precision, and who disappeared without consequence when the damage was done. He had done it before, and the law, as it stood, had no mechanism to hold him accountable for any of it. Not a single crime, not a single charge, just a man who walked away clean. Twice. Here is the custody battle. The legal question at the center of the divorce was one that had no clean answer. Marcus was on the birth certificate. He had been present at the birth. He had held that child in his arms, fed her, named her, loved her, for the first 14 months of her life. But biologically, she was Ray's daughter. A man who had vanished. A man who had no interest, as far as anyone could determine, in being present in any child's life. So what does justice look like when the law and love point in opposite directions? What does a court do with a child whose biological father is a ghost, and whose legal father is a man whose heart has been shattered by the very woman who placed her in his arms? These are not abstract legal questions. They are human ones, and they have no clean answers. What Marcus decided. Here is where the story stops being about betrayal and starts being about character. After months of legal battle, after everything that had been pulled apart and exposed and argued over in a courtroom, after all of it, Marcus made a decision that stunned his own attorneys. He chose to remain in the child's life. Not because a court ordered him to. Not because it was legally required. The paperwork could have gone the other way, and he knew it. He chose it because of one thing he said to his brother on the night of the confrontation, a sentence that, according to that brother, ended the conversation entirely. She didn't choose this. None of us did. But she's here, and she's going to know that somebody stayed. That is the sentence that ends the legal portion of this story. What it says about Marcus, you can decide for yourself. Where Diane is today. Diane moved to another state within 8 months of the divorce being finalized. Contact with mutual friends became infrequent, then stopped almost entirely. She has not spoken publicly about any of this. Several people who were close to her during the marriage say she carries what happened. Not quietly, not peacefully, but she carries it, as people who have made the choices she made tend to do. Where Ray is today. Ray's whereabout now is unknown. As of the time this account was assembled, Ray has not been found. He has not been charged. He has not been held legally accountable for anything that happened in either household he passed through. Because legally, and this is the part that sits the hardest, he didn't do anything illegal. He was a man who was in the wrong places, who made choices that destroyed other people's lives, who left without looking back, and the law had nothing to say about any of it. That fact alone says something about the limits of the law when it comes to this kind of harm. The bigger truth. I want to say something now, not about what Diane did, and not about what Ray did. Both of those things speak for themselves. I want to say something about what this story actually is, underneath the betrayal and the DNA tests and the courtrooms. It is a story about the spaces we leave in our own lives. Marcus built something extraordinary. A home, a business, a life that looked, from every angle, like success. And in doing so, he spent years being present everywhere except in the place that needed him most. That is not an excuse for the choices Diane made. Let me be very clear about that. What she did was a choice, a series of choices, and she made them with full knowledge of what they meant. But the world that made those choices possible, that world was not built by Ray or Diane alone. Marcus built it, one 18-hour day at a time. That is a truth worth sitting with. The final image. Marcus still drives himself to work now. He says he prefers it. Some mornings, he takes the long way. Windows down. No music. Just the road and his own thoughts, and whatever he is still working out from everything that happened. About what he had, what he lost, and what, against everything, he chose to keep. That is the kind of man Marcus turned out to be. Whether he knew that about himself before all of this began, that is the question I keep coming back to. I want to hear from you, and I mean that genuinely. Was Marcus partly responsible for the environment that made this possible? Or does responsibility begin and end with the choices Diane and Ray made? Drop your answer in the comments. There is no wrong one, but there is a real one. And tell me this, because this is the question I think about the most. If you were Marcus, and you found out the truth about that child, do you stay? Or do you walk away? Because how a man answers that question says a great deal about who he is. If this story hit you the way I think it did, stay right here. Because the next story I'm about to bring you involves a woman who discovered something even more devastating than this. Not about her husband, about her own mother. And the fallout from that discovery is still happening till today. Subscribe CTA. If you've been watching this channel and you haven't subscribed yet, now is a good time. We tell stories like this because they are real, because they are complicated, and because the truth, even when it is difficult to look at, is worth understanding. Hit subscribe, leave a comment, and I'll see you in the next one.